6 minutes before the meeting and get here on time.
That is pretty good, 6 minutes.
Nice, huh?
You must have been, seating the speed limit, like.
No. In fact, that first little part of my road that's dirt, I have to go super slow.
Yeah.
My neighbors don't like it when I get so fast.
Oh, you haven't seen it come back, oh, it's 40, 45. Oh, good. I should.
Welcome back. That was your brief, rest of the planning? About what, 10 hours?
So where did you get the?
I actually was,
Maybe you're supposed to get.
I did, I printed everything out.
I used to have one of those about 3 years ago, not as fancy.
I got a text message from somebody, that number I didn't recognize, so I guess it was Richard. So, it said it's running 5 minutes late.
Well, we can start and then we can,
Yeah.
roll call
We'll get
when we get there.
Yeah, we'll get the,
And I
basics
printed
out of the way.
what? I love that work.
We gotta go through minutes approval.
Oh, that's right, we're supposed to do surveys.
Right.
Yeah,
Right?
and they're all.
I kind of read something, I guess online about it.
No, true.
Yeah, but.
I just finally decided that
It
I
helps
had.
us with our.
Yeah.
Well, that was an expensive amount of
It's 6 o'clock. Welcome everybody. I'd like to call this meeting the April 7, 2022 meeting of the Planning Commission to order. Welcome. Good to see everybody. We're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. You all ready for this? I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You made it. Well, I was on my way here. All right, well, now that we're all here, let's do a roll call. Who's here?
Lee Bralish here.
Force Feeny here.
Jerry Fleet here.
Alan Angel is here.
Richard Fisher here.
Fisher's here right on time. All right. We've got a decent sized agenda, but I imagine there's a whole lot in here controversial, but having said that, does anybody up here want to declare any conflicts of interest? No.
Nope.
No. None. All right. Is Sunrise ready to do their presentation? You want to
Sure.
I suppose you want to be first and then Scamper, is that the idea?
Whatever you'd like.
Yeah, let's do that. We've got a bunch of minutes here to approve, but we won't bore you with that.
Okay.
Let me go ahead and give you a copy of this survey that we're going to talk about here.
Okay, great. Does everybody in the room understand that this is a presentation, I think, of just the online survey, right?
Correct. I just want to go over the
Okay.
results of that. There's
Yeah,
a couple
but
extra
This
copies.
is for an update to the general plan.
And then will you just state who you are and,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
thank you.
I'm Brad Robbins with Sunrise Engineering. I spoke before the council a couple months ago, and I met Alan a few months ago too.
Welcome, good to see you.
And yeah, we're the consultant for you dealing with your general plan. We went ahead and did the survey as you have before you there. And what I want to do is just kind of do a real quick summary of that. And what we were looking for in this wasn't necessarily specific answers, although I'm going to go through some of that stuff. It's more the trends that have been developed. And that's kind of what your general plan is going to be about. It's going to be about the trends. So with that, let me just get into it. We had 125 responses, and for a town of your size, that is pretty much what is expected. So it was a fairly good.
You know what, just for the sake, I think we got a decent crowd. Would you give us just a 90-second overview of the whole process, start to finish, since this is just sort
The
of
general
beginning
plan?
of it? Yeah, the update to the.
Yeah.
I don't know that everybody has
Sure.
a sense of where this fits into the big
Yeah,
picture.
we were contracted by the city some time back. Because of COVID, things got a little bit slowed down, and because of some of your political stuff that had gone on here, we're waiting for the new council to be seated. When that happened, we started our process. A general plan basically is your base document for land use in the city or town that you're in. Tearing off of that is your zoning. So what we're going to try to do here with this process is get your general plan fixed up, and that becomes with strategies, goals, and action items, which will be part of each so-called element. In regard to a town of this size, the state requires 2 elements, which is a transportation element and a land use element. The state recommends that you also have a housing element, which we're going to do. And then we're going to do a lot of other stuff too, like historic, economic development, recreation, those kind of things. So it'll be a whole kind of overview of your city. It'll give you policies, goals, and objectives to follow when developers come in. And developers should be following this based on your recommendations and the council recommendation to do so. As far as the process is concerned, this is kind of the initial step. After this, once we kind of review this with you, we're going to go back and start writing the document. I've been talking to Frank. He's been very nice in helping me out, trying to get this whole thing scheduled. As soon as we have something that's concrete enough to bring back to you, we will bring it back to you. And you are our steering committee. Once that gets to a point to where it's ready to go to hearing, it'll come back to the planning commission for hearing, and then it'll go to the town council for the final approval. And we're hoping to do that within the next probably 4 to 5 months. So.
And remind us, in the state of Utah, what's required of the town with regard to how often we go through this process?
Generally, towns go through this about once every 15 to 20 years. Now, everybody in Utah now, maybe not all towns, but most people, especially in this area, northern Utah, they're all struggling with development. So these documents are changing quickly. Normally, you would update them every 5 years, but they're also a living document. You can update them however often you want to keep them relevant and active. So it's very likely that, you know, with the kind of growth that's going on, you'll probably update this far greater than once every 5 years. You'll have to.
Sure.
Because things do change, but that's generally the way it works.
Gotcha. All right. And in most cases, unless there's some ordinance to the contrary, this is a document that we use as a guide, but it doesn't lock us into things.
That is correct.
Yeah.
This is your policy document. And like I said, this is kind of the policy document. And on top of that, you've got your zoning, which implements this. Your zoning is more your official ordinance type document that you must follow. You don't necessarily have to follow this, but the goal is to follow it.
Follow it as close as we can,
Yeah.
and obviously with as much input from the town as we're creating policy. Great. All right.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Sorry for the interruption.
No worries.
Appreciate
And as
it.
I go through this, if you have any questions, just stop me and we'll talk about whatever you want to. But again, we had 125 responses for a town of your size. I think that's a fair number, and I think it's an expected number. Of those, 70% of the people that responded were full-time residents. 76% of them were actually residential owners in the town. And then surprisingly to me, but maybe not to you, is that 59% of the people have lived here between 0 and 5 years. So you've had a population that's kind of been turning over a bit. In regard to the top reasons why people want to live here in Apple Valley, number one was that people like the open space. They like a quiet community. They like the recreational opportunities. They like a safe environment. They like the small town atmosphere. They like the dark sky, and they like the clean air. And what this tells me is that people live here because they want to get away from urbanization to a certain extent. To get into a little bit more specifics about some of the land use type things, first of all, commercial. And I'm just kind of going to go through each one of these. One of the questions was providing new commercial growth only adjacent to existing Highway 59. 57% of the people think that's the right place for commercial, as opposed to 24% that do not. Growth in other areas for commercial, 34% believe that is a bad idea. 46% believe you should not have, or you should not allow commercial in other areas. Industrial development, this
On
one,
that front, did you get any comments from people suggesting where else development might go?
I have a whole, and I was gonna bring this up, I have a whole spreadsheet
Yeah.
of that. I can't print that out. I can email you.
Okay.
You guys can take a look at all the different comments. Everybody pretty much commented on different things, so, but I can get that for you. In regard to industrial development, there's not a lot of support for that. 53% do not want any industrial development, and that's not a surprise, really. 68% want to preserve agricultural land. When it comes to residential density, people like the larger lots. Lots greater than 1 acre in size had far more support than those of high density. 73% of the people surveyed do not want any type of high density in town. And honestly, that's in keeping with a rural town. I mean, most rural towns do not want high density, so there's not a big surprise there.
Did we dig in at all to separate out 1 to 5 and then 5 and greater, or did we just ask for?
There is, yeah, we have like 3 different categories here. It's in the survey there. For as far as support of high density residential, less than 1 acre lot in size, 73% said no. They do not want less than 1 acre in size.
Oh, we
Half-
do have that.
Half acre in size, 55% do not want it. High density, 5 acre per unit, 79% do not want that. So there's a clear trend here that large, high density projects are not desired in the town. The next few kind of lines talk about manufacturing again. Again, 64%, 56% do not want manufacturing or warehouses. The next line here I thought was kind of interesting, short-term rentals. Short-term rentals has been a big issue in southern Utah, and in your town, it's 35. I mean, 35% of the people want them, 35% don't. So it's kind of right there. Supporting tourism and hospitality industry, 48% say yes, 28% do not want that. And that would be like hotels and those type of things. And again, it would have to be adjacent to Highway 59. Preserving open space, 76% of the people, that's a pretty high majority of your folks want to keep open space. Tourist and commercial, again, there is some support for that if it's adjacent to Highway 59. In regard to annexing more property into the town, 46% say no, 25% say yes. So there's quite a little divide there. In regard to golf courses, and this was more like a kind of a recreation type of an issue, 46% do not, I'm sorry, 65% do not
Hey,
want
Margaret,
golf courses.
you're gonna talk, go out, okay?
Okay,
Thank you.
all right. Yeah, sure.
So on the golf course, sorry, what side of the blue line are we on there?
You're on 65% of people do not want golf courses. Do not, yeah. Yeah, and that's a pretty high majority. This question about eco-friendly homes, this has to do with like green development and those type of things. 48% of people support that, 30% do not. In regard to moderate income housing, again, this is one of those elements that the state suggests that you do. I suggest you do it too, because even though it's not required, it's something that's the right thing to do. 50% of the people surveyed do encourage moderate income housing of some sort, 35% neutral on this one, and then a small percentage do not. So I think the moderate income housing is probably something the community would like to have.
What did the neutrals and the yeses total?
On that one,
Yeah.
85. In regard to architectural standards for new homes, the state's coming out with some new information on this, and this may not even be relevant at all, but the state, because of moderate income housing, is basically said you can't regulate architecture in regard to single family detached homes. So this is kind of moot at this point, but it was a good question. To say that 30% of your community said they didn't want to regulate it anyway. I'm sorry, 44%. As opposed to 30% said that they did. In regard to code enforcement issues and uncut properties, 52% want some action, 28% do not,
Would you say 50%?
53%,
How many do not?
28%. And then there's a portion there of undecided. In regard to allowing for accessory dwelling units, which is kind of the way you provide for moderate income housing in communities like this, along with what they call like interior dwelling units. And those are something the state set up to where you as an individual can rent out a room in your house to a long-term rent, not a short-term, but a long-term. And that helps the housing situation. 64% of your residents that were surveyed want to have accessory dwelling units, 14% do not, and then the rest are just, they don't care. So when it comes down to paying for increased taxes for road pavement improvements, 24% want that, 46% do not. Providing street lighting, here's a big one, 77% do not want street lighting. In working with UDOT, which you have the highway going through here, and it's almost mandatory you do that anyway, but 59% of your residents surveyed want you to continue work with UDOT, 18% do not. Limit the number of private wells to protect groundwater quality, 44% want you to do that, 30% do not. A lot of this is somewhat out of your hands. It's going to depend on water rights and all that other kind of stuff, but it's kind of good information to know. Develop a more robust stormwater and drainage system. 60% want to have that. 13% do not. Develop a wastewater system. 50% would like to have that. 24% do not. Leaving the current dirt gravel roads, but improving the condition of maintenance. 56% want to have that continue. 12% do not. Raise water rates to fund the drilling of additional wells owned and operated by the water company. 55% say no on that. So that's kind of not so much of a surprise. When it comes to protection of like your environment, the ridge lines, stream bottoms, plateaus, 64% want that protected. 25% do not. In regarding to supporting recreational projects, like new parks and trails for walking and hiking, 60% do want that. 23% do not. In regard to providing street lighting, we've already said that one, 75% no. Regulate outdoor lighting to maintain dark sky, 76% like the dark sky, which makes sense. Willing to pay for increased taxes for community center, 68% say no. Willing to pay increased taxes to improve fire department equipment and services, 47% say yes, 30% say no. Of all the different fee questions asked, this was the only one that had a positive response to it. And in the sheriff's substation, that was pretty close. It was 30% yes, 36% said no. So it's about 50-50. In regard to supporting educational opportunities, 54% say no. And I think that's because you've got them pretty local around here anyway. Historic preservation, 56% of the people want that, as opposed to 16% that do not. This next category was the biggest one you had. Support, preserve the rural character of the town, 86% yes. A fraction no. It's just people wanting to preserve the rural character. Support the creation of ATV trails, 45% yes, 33% no. And support a fire station at the Cedar Point area of town, 28% yes, 37% no. And there's a pretty big gap in the middle that just didn't seem to care. Promoting a town as a tourist destination, 52% say no, 30% say yes. And then do not promote the town as any type of destination. 50% say don't promote the town, 21% say promote the town.
What was the percent that said no? Or
It was 50% do not promote the town as a tourist destination. 21% were okay with that. The public does not want you to provide fee waivers or incentive by 65% to 12%. And then finally, in regard to renewable energy and production, solar, wind farms, and those type of things, 52% no, 28% think it's okay. Now, in regard to kind of the major trends that I kind of picked out of this thing, and you can tell me if I'm on base here, if we need something else to talk about, but people like it here because it's away from issues created by urbanization. That's number one. Commercial is okay if it's by the highway. Residential lots of 1 acre or greater in size are preferred. No high density residential development, no manufacturing uses. Moderate income resident housing is okay, which also includes accessory dwelling units. Infrastructure improvements are okay related to stormwater, maintenance of existing roads and water, but no street lights in the night sky should be protected. Protect hillsides and ridge lines, provide for recreational opportunities, protect historic resources, and essentially the number one thing, preserve the rural character of the town. Do not promote the town as a tourist destination as far as economic development, and no raising of fees or taxes unless related to fire protection. Do you see anything else that I've missed?
How do you, in your experience, you've done this before, how do you reconcile the fact that concern about water shows up as a major concern, but there's almost no willingness to pay to resolve that problem? How do you, your experience, is that normal?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's 100%. Just like raising, I was actually general manager for a water company for several years, but whenever you do fee increases for water, sewer, whatever it is, people just don't want to do it. Now, what happened in California, what's going to end up happening here is the state's going to start mandating. I know there's some areas in certain communities where sewer is becoming a big issue because septic tanks are failing and they're becoming a health problem. So that's going to happen. The state, yeah, there's some places that are like that. Now the state's also starting to mandate as part of an element in a general plan. I think it's starting in 2025 that you have a water element to start analyzing these water issues that are out there. And what most communities are doing, not so much in Utah yet, but in other states, is they have what are called tiered rates, where the more you use, the more you pay. And that helps conserve water too. And I have a feeling that's probably, if it hasn't already happened in the state, that's going to start coming your way too. But no, there's always a reluctance to pay for more water.
I find that fascinating. And in your experience, is would you guess that the reverse with regard to increased fees as far as fire is just simply a safety issue, probably, right?
Yeah, I know that leads other communities, like up in Duck Creek, Cedar Mountain Fire Protection Aids, they raise their fees in order to pay for increased fire service and training, the whole thing. Yeah. So that's a common trend. You're starting to see that people are willing to pay for that. And honestly, if you didn't have the sheriff, I think you would see they'd be willing to pay for police protection too. So
I think a lot of it is the water. They don't want another well drilled. They want the Canaan Springs Angel Landing thing. You know what I mean? It's maybe an aquifer or something else. The wells are not recharging enough for the citizens. And maybe that's why they're saying that.
well, I know the state has come down in a lot of areas like up in Parowan and Cedar City and those places that, they're threatening to take away water rights if they're not used. They haven't done it yet to my knowledge, but I mean, it's those kind of things that are starting to happen in regard to water. It's really the limiting factor in development. You probably see it here. The water, nothing's going to happen. So, and that's what's happening in most communities. Yeah. So, any other questions or? So what we're going to do at this point in time, I'm going to go back. We're going to start doing our written part of this. Frank is your planning guy. I understand that. I'm going to coordinate with him on some stuff. And then when we get to a point, we're going to come back here and kind of review everything we've got going.
In your experience, have you ever done that you've gone through this process in the town of 900 people?
Yeah, I've got 4 others going at the same time right now. So yeah.
So I'm just curious, based on your experience, how do you navigate that tension between? It seems relatively understood among the town that one of the sources of income for the town is impact fees and other fees that come with development. But that's completely over against the sentiment of the town with regard to development. We're a target now for developers, obviously. We've been told that directly, that we're the next big thing. Do towns typically find their way to stave that off somehow and find other sources of income, or do they just have to come to terms with the fact that that's growth is gonna happen. What in your experience, what do you usually see?
Yeah, you know, towns like yourself and some of the smaller ones out there that don't have like a commercial base yet. I mean, you struggle for income. It's just the reality of it. In general terms, and you should know this, is that residential development doesn't pay for itself. Commercial development does, industrial development does. That's why when you look at the big cities, they're all after commercial and industrial. Residential is kind of a byproduct because they have to fuel that, yeah. But generally speaking, residential does not do that for you. Now, once it gets to a certain value, yeah, it will. You know, you get up in that $500,000 to $1 million, $500,000 homes,
Yeah.
$1.5 million homes. Yeah.
Well, that's what people are asking for. Here.
Yeah.
Basically, it's large lots.
Yeah.
And large lots typically. the big
But you asked the question about impact fees. I assume you have them
Yeah.
here. Do not give up on those. I mean, when they come in, get your impact fees. Make sure you get those impact fees. They offset the impact. That's what they're supposed to be doing.
Well, the tricky
Offsetting.
part is that I think this, and again, I'm, not been here more than 5 or 6 years, but it seems like small towns tend to rely on those impact fees as income when in fact they should be used to mitigate the impact of that development.
There are
that's
restrictions. Yeah.
It's a difficult
Yeah.
needle to thread.
And I'm talking in my experience in California, there are restrictions on those fees. I'm sure they're here too. When you collect an impact fee, it is supposed to mitigate the impact that you're collecting it for. It should never be used for maintenance and long-term paying of employees or any of
Welcome to
that.
Apple.
Well, I mean, I don't know Utah law, but I can just tell you my experience is those are set aside. Like, for example, if you collect a park impact fee, it is supposed to go to a park improvement. If you collect a fire or police impact fee, it's supposed to go to that improvement. That's my experience. So,
Keyword there, suppose.
yeah, but make sure you get your fees. That's the whole thing. They're creating an impact on your existing community. Get those fees.
That's the goal for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much. Is there so this was this sort of anonymous survey that
Yes.
we did mostly online. Is there what do you suggest with regard to other opportunities for input from the town before we get this thing in kind of its final form? You and I spoke once upon a time about an open forum, maybe a joint meeting between town and planning commission. What are your thoughts?
I think what we have here is probably the best we could get.
Okay.
I'm not sure we need to do much more beyond this. There will be other opportunities because we will come back before the planning commission again. And then we'll be in the city council. And if it takes a couple of meetings to get through to understand it, then that's what it takes. So, but I think we're headed in the right direction now.
Yeah.
And as soon as, like I said, we get to a point, I get some of these elements written and ready to go, we'll bring them back here. You guys can look at the policies and the action items and those kind of things. We'll go from there. In the meantime, I'll work with Frank.
This is a as far as I'm concerned, a really good roadmap for the direction that we need to head. It's obviously our job to do what's in the best interest of the town. There's obviously there's always that tension between we want this, but we don't want to pay for it. You see that in the results.
Yeah.
Here. So that's a problem we got to figure out how to solve, obviously.
There was nothing in this survey I saw that stood out like there's a problem.
Yeah.
Nothing. This, for a rural town of your size, I would expect everything I saw right here.
So the thing that I found, I'd love to get you guys' comments so far on what you're seeing, but one of the things that I find the most surprising, I think, is the fact that we've assumed, I think as a planning commission for some time, that it's well understood that commercial development is, as you pointed out, the better source of income for the town. We've assumed as a planning commission that the flavor of commercial development, because of where we are and the beauty and recreation opportunities and so on, should be tourist related. But this survey suggests that that's not a direction we might head. So I guess part of our job is to figure out what is that. If we don't attract hotels and UTV rentals, then what do we?
Well,
attract?
it seems to me like some parts of it say, yes, we want that, and then another part
But yeah, I would have thought that would have been, I mean, based on
Doesn't
our
really agree
assumptions,
with
that would have been a standout. But it's
Yeah, you
clearly
know,
not.
I've seen a lot of the surveys that were conducted in the past, some way back 10 years, maybe longer even, and they mirror this.
Yeah, it's curious. I don't know
So
what to
there's
make of
not
that.
been a whole lot of change in.
I mean, I'm trying to figure out what a
Well, probably more
rural
of a
community
mix.
that's 45 minutes from the nearest town.
Maybe a little bit of that, but maybe something that's actually, I mean, maybe somebody wants a hair salon here, so they don't have to drive to St. George type deal. you know,
Sure,
or
sure.
Whatever. I mean, that's,
I guess I assumed those things would come, but I'm just, our job is to figure out, I guess, you know, if absent having an economic development officer as a staff position, how do we attract non-tourist related commercial development in a town that's this far out?
Well, you-
People gonna
if you
commute
had-
to Apple Valley to go to work at an office? I don't understand.
If you had the tourist development, you would probably get this other.
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
That's what I always
Yeah.
assumed, but I mean, these results, you know, lead me to believe that people don't want tourism.
Well, in one place they do, another place maybe not.
I
Do you think
interpret it,
Maybe they're concerned about just one thing, we need to get one thing fixed, and that's a water issue.
Well, that's, yeah.
And that's the least of their concern of anything else, except for the water. We need to get that fixed and then move on.
What were I'm curious.
I
what
say,
you-
I just interpreted that the right kind of commercial is okay. And I think some tourist commercial is probably okay. Do they want to be overwhelmed with it? Probably not, but I think if it's
Just
okay in the right
word
place.
Commercial kind of turns everybody off. It's got such broad meaning to it that
Ironically,
there's
that's
everything under the.
the only answer to our money problems is commercial. I mean, I don't see another solution.
well, like I said, if you get a certain home value
Yeah.
increase, then you're gonna
And
get
that's
more
gonna
money
come
that
with
way.
Large scale lots. to the-
Yeah.
the Border of the
Yeah.
mayor, then we have no choice. I mean,
Too bad that vitamin company isn't moving up here. What's the
They
name
passed
of it?
us. They went down the
went up the hill.
road. We didn't have any place for them.
Well, the problem with like, and I can see why warehouses, for example, warehouse, you're just getting property tax on the warehouse. You're not getting, you might get an employee or two, but generally speaking, you could build a 1 million square foot warehouse. You're not gonna get much out of that,
Right, that's exactly.
but a bunch of truck traffic that's going in and out of there. So it's those kind of uses you have to be careful
I just
with.
don't know. Yeah, I'm curious, what other kinds of, well, that's part of our brainstorming, I guess. What do we want to try to, we've assumed that tourism is our, that's our,
What kind of money
That's our-
would draw okay, so I'm an off-roader. And we have a Trail Hero down at Sand Hollow that brings in 15,000 people. If we create trails out here, those people will be spending money.
well, we don't even have to create them. We have them. We just have to give people a place to stay to access them.
Yeah.
And a place to eat
Yeah,
and a place for a little bit of entertainment after they're done off the trail. Yeah, those are the kinds of commercial. I've always
So you come
assumed.
to a town meeting for.
Yeah.
See, the thing about hotels too, is you get the transient occupancy tax out of this too.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
you get the property tax, you get that, and then you get the spin off from people staying there if you had restaurants.
That's a conversation I think we need to continue to have with residents, because I understand the negative impact of it. It's traffic, it's potential for shenanigans and whatnot, so.
Oh, like they was saying,
What
and,
the
or
other-
excuse me, Forrest, one spot says not really, another spot says K a little bit. So
Yeah. I guess, you know, my assumption would have been that just like preserve the rural nature of the town, that doesn't surprise me that 86% of the people say, yeah, let's do it. I would have thought that some large percentage of people would have said, hey, let's bring tourists.
Well,
tourists
then
in.
like this
We want
lot,
their dollars, but that didn't happen.
like the lot size right here. The half acre was a big no, but support 1 acre and above was absolutely yes.
Right, that doesn't make sense to me.
And then you got the 5 acre right here.
they
Yeah,
want more than that.
and that makes sense.
That's what it is, yeah.
You can
That
have,
makes
we
sense.
have ordinances that allow you to have horses on the here, so.
Yeah.
That's
That's what people are thinking.
Yeah,
A lot like mine. is what they're thinking. I've got
Then it had like the one.
preserve their area. Yeah.
Maybe I'm looking at it wrong.
What I'll do is there are comments in that spreadsheet. I'll email them
Okay,
But-
yeah, that'd be awesome.
and then she
I'll look
can
into that.
distribute them to whoever.
Okay.
It worked. Oh,
Thank you so much.
All right, you bet. Yeah, we'll be talking to you.
thank you.
That was a great presentation.
That'll be interesting. I for one, am really excited about the updating of a general plan. I think that, you know, we're.
I want to Texas Road.
Yeah, I mean, Virgin has nice.
Yeah.
Why can't we have Okay, we do have an application to appear before us. I saw the application. It didn't have a lot of details on it. So who is Dwayne here? Unless, are you guys ready to move on to the next item? Okay. So could you give us your name? And your
Absolutely. My name is Mandy Olson. This is my sister Jenny, my husband Jared, and my son Dakota. We are speaking on behalf of our father Dwayne Stock,
Okay.
1532 North Romeway. First, before I get started, I would like to acknowledge Jenna and all the work that she does for our city. She works her tail off.
She does.
Thank you, Jenna. I appreciate everything you've done for me. Dad, unfortunately, won't be in attendance tonight. His allergies or something fierce, and his hearing has gone.
Yeah.
He's almost 83 years old. If you guys need be, we do have an affidavit ready to sign and whatnot to speak on his behalf if need be. We weren't able to get it ready by today as we had Dakota and Jared on two different sides of the country as of a few hours ago almost.
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, since there's not an application
Well, we'll
or
get.
something pending, then
Gotcha.
We don't need that.
A little bit about myself. I actually grew up in Apple Valley, moved here in with Dad in 1988. At that time, it was just him and I. I am a mother of two incredible young men, Dakota and Trevor, who was actually a returned missionary from Ukraine. I served as a volunteer in the incorporation effort alongside Mary Reap and Jan Hershey and others that led to the creation of our little town. I call it our because I still consider it my home as well.
So, just an overview of what this lot, what's at 1533?
He's like 1.16 acre. Just simply residential.
Okay.
And yeah. My husband and I actually built a home here in 2005, but due to a set of unfortunate, extremely nefarious circumstances, our home was taken from us. Thank you, Obama. Otherwise, we would still be residents as we speak. To get a little familiar with my dad, as I think it's important to understand where he's coming from. Dad was born at the tail end of the Depression era. Life was certainly not easy for my dad whatsoever, having been raised in a single room home with 3 siblings and having to grow up at a very, very, very young age really fast. Our grandfather at the time was homesteading a ranch, which is cane beds now, while trying to raise 4 young kids. The only lifestyle Dad knows is one of self-sufficiency, self-reliance, hard work, and living within your means. He and our mom raised us 5 kids in a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, 800 square foot home. He worked 7 days a week to make ends meet. In 1988, when Dad purchased his modest 1,200 square foot modular home and placed it here in Apple Valley, that was the height of extravagance for him. Dad spent a great majority of his life operating heavy equipment of all shapes and sizes, having worked at Sunrock for over 40 years. Many residents of Apple Valley have benefited from Dad's knowledge, his equipment skills, and his hard work. Before the town incorporated in 2004, Dad would clear the roads, clear the bus stop areas, mailbox areas, and people's driveways without ever having to be asked after a snowstorm. Many horses have been buried, large rocks have been moved, trenching's been done. I could go on and on and on with Dad and his equipment. Dad recently started a yard cleanup effort and I quote from him, because I don't want the city hollering about my yard. The first major improvement being the removal of tons of block that were stacked in his yard. Scrap metal, junk, wood in general has been removed. This is a current work in progress and we ask for the town's patience. We are working on it. And after, and God willing, not anytime soon, Dad's passing, major changes will be coming to the property as my son will be taking over. the property and the eventual removing of his containers and sheds. The reason we have asked to come in front of the planning commission tonight, my dad wants to be able to store all of his equipment, his tools, vehicles, ATVs, RVs, and to create a workspace for him so he doesn't have to be out in the elements anymore. When he is cold, it makes him sick. He wants to be out, a place where he can be out and do his thing. And I call it a place to store all of my junk so people don't have to look at it. Yes, this building is a beautiful engineered steel building. This building will match his house and be as non-industrial looking as potentially possible. As we are aware that some residents in the Apple Valley deplore the industrial type look, while others don't mind it. As we are working through the permit process for Dad's building, we ran into issues. So far, his permit has been approved by the building department through the county and whatnot. Fire department is pending, as we had to provide further info regarding.
Wait, is there a building permit on the Apple Valley?
Mhm.
Okay.
Oh,
You said-
application.
Oh,
Application.
there's an application. Mhm. So what, you just referenced county, I don't understand.
It went through Lance
No,
Skipper.
it's just- Yeah, but that's township.
Oh, I just said Lance Skipper because I know him from county. That's.
Yeah, he works for the township.
Yeah,
he's-
so
he's
that's
saying-
who approved
okay,
it so far.
I got it.
Mhm. Then we got to the planning and zoning. We got a message from Mr. Earnhardt stating CC 1028-240 as the permit got tagged for review due to the square footage of the building. It is 40 by 60. You have to remember Dad has backhoes, multiple tractors. I mean, again, if you go back to knowing my dad, you'll understand him and his equipment. My husband talked with Frank Lindhart via cell phone. He was not mad at you, by the way. They had just got the call to split and be into another state. So they're like, oh, they were seriously like running that night. It was like, so that's kind of where we are right now. Ordinance 1028-240, among other ordinances in chapter 10, can come across as being very restrictive. As actually admitted in a past planning commissioner, she openly admits that our building ordinances are restrictive. She's not here anymore though.
Who's that?
It was Jan. I just lost her name, Janet. Yeah, it was Janet. These are the type of restrictions, honestly, that for us in researching, we would see in an HOA or CCRs or inclusive type neighborhood, exclusive type neighborhoods. Based on our research, we felt that they're not only restrictive, but particular 1028-240-D-2 can come across as being a bit discriminatory. As it states, square footage of detached garage in a accessory building cannot be larger than 50% for the primary structure. In other words, I have a large home, I can, you with a small home cannot. It seems to punish those who own modest-sized homes. Not everyone wants large, lavish homes. Not everyone likes to play keeping up with the Joneses, so to speak. Nor can everyone afford such homes. Again, a lot of people come to Apple Valley to live modest lives, which my dad did. These restrictions create practical difficulties and deprive smaller homeowners of the right to enjoy their properties as they see fit within reason. While we also discovered that during the meetings and discussing leading up into the eventual amending, adopting of these ordinances, the impact to existing residents weren't really considered, nor were they really mentioned. I'd done research back from 2017 forward. It was a lot about new development, the big garages going in the homes. If I remember correctly, Marty had shown pictures of the large garages in Dixie Springs. And that's kind of where that was kind of geared towards. Not existing, I never found once where existing residents were mentioned or thought about in this sense. Again, my dad being here since 1988. 1028-24-2 D-2, in my opinion, needs to be struck from the land use ordinance altogether or come up with something more understandable. Something that was suggested to us by numerous residents who we had talked to was base it on lot size. We asked the Planning Commission to allow us to apply and to consider a conditional use permit for Dad's building, as the building will in fact be harmonious with that particular area and with Dad's neighbors. We have talked to a few in the 150 range. We haven't come across one of them so far that has any problem with Dad's building going in.
Is this in that area up here that has its own CCNRs?
No.
No.
It's across the street from
This
my
is
house.
right over here.
Yeah.
When you come to the stop sign, you turn right, it's the
Yeah.
second lot.
Second on the right.
Oh.
We used to have all kinds of cinder blocks. I
Yeah.
think your brother was a mason or something.
Yeah, well, it is, Ron, it's actually where was Ron's,
Oh.
but my dad wanted them gone. He,
Yeah, I seen those all.
Yeah.
Blocks disappeared.
yeah, my husband and my son single-handedly removed those bad boys
That's a lot of blocks.
out.
And they have not a single weed on their property, and you look over at my property,
Her
there's.
dad's always been a really good. man.
Thank you. He does, he's very meticulous. He doesn't want to be a problem for the city or ever become a problem. He's a simple man that wants to live a simple life, but also enjoy his property. And so this is where we are asking to allow us to come forth with a conditional use permits. I do have the drawings and whatnot for said building, if you'd like to look at that and consider that as well. My dad simply wants to enjoy his property. Upon my research looking into this, the permitting steps, building, fire, planning commission. The order of these departments need to be looked at, in my opinion, and considered for change as well as it is now. And in our situation, Dad's permit went through the building department first, giving us the notion that everything was a-okay, everything looks good, good to go. A great suggestion would be to put the planning and zoning steps first. Yes, yeah, I don't know how that works. Again, my suggestion,
Be great if you were the only applicant.
just my suggestion. Anyway, no, it's building fire plan. Yeah.
Oh, did
It
you?
depends on if there's a zone change involved, then we get that.
It's just how it's typed on when you go to the permit and put it in. That's just how it's typed. It doesn't mean that.
It
that's
doesn't
the
mean,
order.
that's what I did not know. Yeah,
Doesn't mean that's the order somebody looks at it when they're reviewing the
Gotcha.
plan. That's just how it's typed.
gotcha. Completely understand. It's just something I kind of noticed. I was like, well,
Yeah, it doesn't mean anything.
we asked the planning commission to please thoroughly consider our father's needs for his building and to please consider allowing us to use a conditional use permit to make this happen for him. We thank the commission for their time and for the work that they do for this town.
Thank you.
Didn't we just have a conversation in February about this? The extra buildings, and we first started to say no commercial steel buildings to live in. And then we're like, wait a minute, we need to re-look at it and talk about this. And I did some research on that.
This stuff's been on the books for quite a
Can you-
long
can you
time.
Give us a quick,
But
you
the,
have that ordinance you referenced?
We can't find
That's,
it.
we can't find it.
Oh, I'll print it off. for
Yeah, I have a
you.
copy
This
of it.
entire-
Just read it, just read it to us.
Is it,
Yeah.
does it start out with supplementary? Is that?
Yeah.
Yes.
1028. She might have, it might be 290, but you might. be
On the
right.
code book, it says 1028, 240 dash.
I can't seem to find it for some reason.
In particular, 1028, 240, go down to letter D, number 2, the total square footage of any detached garage or other accessory building, including agricultural use, accessory building shall be no greater than 50% of the square footage of a primary structure, including the attached garages, which Dad has no attached garages, Dad has no garage, period.
Oh, it's not.
So hang on a minute. That it really says including agriculture.
Yeah.
So somebody that's agriculture that has, farm equipment, and a hay barn can't have it bigger than. a
That,
house.
that's what,
Yes.
that's
No,
exactly
yeah.
what we.
So what brainchild thought that up?
No, let me step it out. When Marty and Frank were going through that,
Like you were on the X zone, yeah.
Marty and Frank were for the bigger garages. When I going through and researching, I couldn't find exactly where
This is
or how that come into play, or who suggested it, or how.
I don't remember, well, I was only
Yeah,
involved in a few of these meetings. So I wasn't really involved in this portion of it.
Agricultural use.
But
I know it's on the website.
perhaps I could shed a little light on
Yeah.
it. We have a procedural problem. The state pretty much did away with conditional uses. It used to be that under each zone, you had, these are the permitted uses, these are the conditional uses. And the state came back and said that's being abused, so they pretty much told every city and town in Utah to eliminate conditional uses and allow more allowed uses. So the only way we have of of addressing this, if the town wishes to change it, is for the town council to amend this ordinance.
That's,
So-
that's kind of what I was asking for as well.
So I would recommend that you go to the town council meeting and give a very short condensed version of this. Simply say, we think it would be wonderful if you could look at revising this ordinance and this ordinance.
Exactly, yeah.
So
And if they agree, then they give the direction to the town, to the planning commission to work on wording, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's really at the town council. There's nothing you can do to apply for anything.
The reason we asked for the special conditional or the conditional use permit, it was suggested to us actually by Kevin Sayer. And because I had talked to him kind of about it. So the only permit my dad has ever pulled
That's old.
was when he put his house up.
I
So,
understand.
so we're kind of working through this.
So, this is a really good, kind of unfortunate in your case, but a really good example of the Apple Valley is now attempting. You talked about earlier in your description here of these ordinances, you should call them restrictive, and every ordinance by nature is.
Sure. But this
Just-
this one in
You can't do this,
particular.
you can't do that. The way this town is operated, and in some cases, up until really recently, has been that ordinances were very often regularly.
Yes, that's.
And that in effect makes a conditional use action, whether it was intended to or not. And that's not how we simply can't sustain the town's governance under those circumstances. As the town grows and you have more and more people coming with suggestions or requests like this, it just becomes unwieldy and it's impossible to manage a town under these circumstances. And that's the attempt we're trying to do. In fact, you'll see later on in our agenda, the bulk of our agenda is literally updating ordinances, because we are, without these updates, we're forced by developers into things that we don't want to do. And so we can't just say, sure, we'll let you do that, even though it says otherwise, or vice versa, because we're not going to do that anymore. We're not going to have a free for all. So Frank's advice is exactly spot on. I do, as I read this, think that it could very well be something we look at and change. It's probably not going to happen, overnight, but these kinds of things, because we're a small town and a small group, we can typically get them done quickly. But by quickly, that means a meeting or two. So you're talking about months probably if we do that. Nothing that I just said is any form of a commitment to you that you might get what you need, but
I would, or my,
and this is a really a great lesson in how government should work. If we have laws, in our case ordinances, that either ran their course or were once upon a time developed and they come with some unintended consequence, it's not like we don't update ordinances on a semi-regular basis around here. In fact, right now, most of the ones we're trying to update are intending to clarify, because in many cases, we've got ordinances that conflict with each other. So that's
right. And then leading up to this particular one, the D number 2, a lot of the discussion was about these big new homes with the big garages on the front and whatnot. So I think it was kind of geared more towards that.
Yeah, the question, we gotta make sure that we don't
But
create another
think-
unintended consequence.
Yeah,
right,
exactly.
Because as soon as
Exactly.
we make an ordinance, it's got to apply to everybody.
Exactly.
And he's right, a conditional use, that's just a simple way of saying, hey, we'll create a loophole for you.
Right.
And everybody else, we gotta hold accountable for this, and that's just no way to operate.
If you
It's not
call
fair.
me, then I've got some suggestions for you where you can get, you may not be able to get 2,400 square feet, but there's some ways that you can work within the ordinances and accomplish what you want or close to it.
Right, and this is what we wanted to predict. Absolutely, I understand that leading up to that, there was quite a bad taste in people's mouth due to the Gooseberry industrial looking house out there and what have you. steel buildings in
That
general.
might have been a reaction, who knows?
Yeah, cargo containers and whatnot, so I'm like, oh boy, you know, but we are open to, I mean, once the shop goes in, trees will be planted along the fence lines to conceal it. There is actually a large garage right next door to Dad's. It's actually bigger than the one Dad is wanting to put in. Yeah, there's, in that area, there's several of them. I have pictures, would you like to see?
Yeah.
These people that got,
Yeah.
yeah, that'd be great.
It's by, yeah, it's she's right across the street neighbor, and their house is meticulous, like,
Yeah.
you could drive by there on the way, and it's.
Well, I applaud you and your family for wanting to,
Yeah, and Dad doesn't understand, you know,
That's
what,
the
how the
neighbors.
process.
Yeah.
And
that-
she's
that's
gone,
right.
she's
That's
gone
even
to
bigger
all
than
the
what you wanna
neighbors.
do.
Yeah, that's way bigger.
Yeah, and in the conditional use permit, it asks for neighbors basically okay within 150 feet of the property. We haven't ran into anybody that would have a problem with it yet.
They just repainted that one.
Yeah, that one's actually bigger than what Dad would like to put in. And then there's, of course, others in the area that I understand why there's not wanting to be.
yeah.
But yeah, I understand that part. In no way, shape or form is this going to look like that in any shape or way. It will have like, this is kind of up the road from agriculture land.
No.
No, it's
Already-
just,
already was.
Yeah. it's up the road from Dad's. I'd have to actually look to whose it is.
Is it also
Oh,
on
I didn't know that.
North Apple Valley? Is it on the same road?
No, not Apple Blossom.
This is on the road.
And this is just one that's going in on Apple Blossom. He's got a big garage. It's well over 50%. I don't know if this person ever building permit wise, but it went up as of within since the ordinance passed. So we were just like,
That's the problem we're trying to
yes,
solve.
exactly.
We appreciate you
Yes.
not doing that end around.
Exactly. And again,
That has been done.
and this is one, there's not gonna be any businesses at any sorts ran out of it. No, you know,
Okay.
it's gonna be nice. It's gonna have gable, like the door gables, downspouts, trees.
Well, thank you, Mandy. We really appreciate you coming and being upfront with us, and
Thank you.
I think Frank's advice is right. Let's take a look at this ordinance, and it might be an opportunity for town council to take a look at other things that have unintended consequences. You know, if we're gonna look at one, let's look at other things.
I appreciate it, yeah.
Council will be able to give the planning commission a direction.
Yeah.
But call me and then I'll brainstorm some of this for structure.
All right, just for example, my niece, she had a home just right over here, tiny little square foot home. Based on that, and he was not even 800 square feet, probably at least 800. Yeah, based on that, she wouldn't even been able to have a garage big enough. You know, so this has got to be done. So to speak,
Okay,
you know.
appreciate that.
All right, thank
so
you much.
Thank you, yeah. Okay, we have some minutes to approve. I'm assuming everybody memorized the minutes, right? So, anybody have corrections or comments you want to make on March 21st set of minutes?
Yeah, I have two.
You want to, shall we do it?
Both.
Yeah, let's do it. Unless anybody has any correction. I think we corrected a couple last time, so these are all, I looked them over, they look good. I appreciate, by the way, Jenna, the fact that in the updated version of the minutes, the motions were very specific, and that's our new plan. So thank you. I consider that a success. We're being very careful about how we articulate the emotions that we pass on to town council. We want to give them exactly our thoughts and ideas about any of these things, so they know why we either recommended or denial. So you did a great job of being specific. Thank you. Does anybody want to make a motion that we approve these en masse?
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes dated March 21, 2022, February 3, 2022, January 20, 2022, December 1st, 2021, September 1st, 2021.
We should probably separate that one because myself and Jerry, we're not here.
And
No,
I'm still
that's
making
okay. We're all.
All you gotta do is
Just abstain.
Well, the rest of them were good because we were here.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying.
That's what I'm saying.
You want to split that.
Just that one because we weren't here.
Just which one, September 1st?
No, March
March
21st.
21st.
To separate that off, then we can vote. on
Yeah,
it.
but no, I don't see the point of that, because the people that
Still-
you replaced aren't here either, so that's, I mean,
We
it
still
very well
agreed
could
to-
be that there wouldn't be quorum left if you guys, if we did it that way. If there was enough turnover, so I understand the purpose of that, but,
No worries.
if we do it that way, we get ourselves in a situation where we might have minutes unapproved. So we don't want that.
That's not, I was just saying separate out and approve them individually. I don't know.
No, I understand, but let's say, for example, that there was a, that they were, well, in fact, it would be.
Jerry. Oh.
Lee and I wouldn't be able to approve minutes for December or September because there's only two of us.
I wouldn't.
Right, my point. So we
Oh,
can't, we
yeah.
can't vote on them if we don't vote on them. We'd have unapproved minutes for December and September. You see what I'm saying? Well, two members of the planning commission don't make it for them. So we can't do it that way. Sorry, I understand. If you're, just trust us that they're right about that.
The forest will tell you.
They're very close.
We have a motion on the table to approve all of these sets of minutes. Do we have a second?
Forest.
I've seconded it.
Okay, any more further discussion? about that? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, minutes approved. Thank you. And we are on pace now to get our minutes between meetings, right? Or our drafts. Okay, perfect. Awesome. Thank you again for that. We have some updates to ordinances. I've referenced that earlier. So we're gonna plow through these hearings and do those one after another, and then we'll come back to the discussion and action if there is such. So to begin, I'd like to open a public hearing on an update to 10.10.030 with regard to some removal and updates of language. Does anybody want to give an overview real quick before we get comments on what the intent here is? Frank, do you want to do that? Shall we do that?
I can enlighten you.
Okay.
This already went through planning commission and town council. And there's only one or a couple of changes that needs to be made. We took the cabins and tiny home ordinances or zones and put them into our commercial zone. And I've since found out that from people that are smarter than me, that it's really a bad idea to have a zone inside a zone. So all we're doing is simply taking them out of the commercial and then they stand alone. That way we may zone a large parcel for commercial with the intent that it becomes whatever, grocery stores or whatever it might be. But once you zone something and it's a permitted use inside that zone, then they can just come back and say, oh, by the way, we want 400 cabins here.
So in effect, we'd have conflicting zones, which is.
So this just removes that. So any of those cabins and tiny homes and RV parks are covered under their own.
Yeah.
That's all we're doing.
They were already covered, but somehow they showed up inside.
It was my idea
Yeah.
that came up with that brilliant idea. And luckily there's people that are smarter than me.
All right, gotcha. So you all seeing here, what we've done is we've redlined out RV park, tiny home. There's a cabin in there somewhere too. So does everybody understand that, what we're trying to do here? Anybody have comments on that? It's basically a cleanup. What it is. Anybody online have any comments?
I have one person that wants to speak, but he hasn't let me know on which one, so I'm just waiting for him to let me know. But as of no,
Okay.
now I don't have anybody.
I will close the hearing on that. Thank you all. I figured that would be a quick one. Pretty simple, just kind of housekeeping. So then we now have a hearing on an update to the curb gutter sidewalk road improvements, ordinance that is 10.28.0 or 190.
Page 40.
It's on page 48 of our packet. Again, it's adding, it's adding some nuanced language with regard to, you want to give us a just, there's nothing earth shattering here, but
No.
it can sound scary when you talk about curb and gutter in a town with dirt roads, so.
Correct. This here is something that the town has been used for many, many years. If you live in an area where, for example, where I live, when I came in for my building permit, the town said, hey, your property in front of the street in front of your property is not improved, just dirt. So then they made me sign deed over 25 feet to them in order for a future street to be public. And then they made me sign what was then called a delay agreement. It simply says that if the town ever decides that they're gonna make this a improved road, then I agree to pay my portion of those improvements. And of course, my property benefits from it because it will go up in value. So most of that was
To be clear, that's on the books already.
on the books already.
Already been happening.
Right.
Beginning of that, beginning, okay.
So the only thing that I really did was, because when you read this, if you're not a professional like me that understands all this stuff, then you have no idea what this is talking about. What is it you agree to and when do you agree to it and how does it work? So I added that whole bottom portion as an explanation so you can read the whole thing and understand what it means.
So in effect, you added language about a special assessment area. That
Correct.
wasn't
I
what-
explained how it works. Yeah.
Which was implied already by the ordinance, but didn't
Didn't specifically understand it. So, and then the only thing I really added was that it only dealt with curb and gutter, but not road improvement. But typically you are responsible for the first 25 feet adjacent for road improvements too. So I added that to clarify that. But everything else just explains that it is done on normally on a special assessment area, and how that works is that the town will come in and say, hey, this whole road's gonna get improved. They vote on it. 70% of the town, of the people living there will have to agree to it in order for it to go through. And then they just figure out it costs this much, and based on your frontage, you're gonna be responsible for X amount of dollars, and it's payable usually over 10 years. 10% a year plus interest.
And the only thing is that road improvement part, that's not correct. So when they go in and do that in Velvet's, we've actually done much that over the years. And when the city comes in and says, we're gonna go in that area, we want to put new improvements. The only thing that gets assessed to the homeowner when it's a residential area is sidewalk, curb and gutter. Absolutely no roads. The roads are completely separate and the city deals with that on their own. They are not together. Never.
I'll disagree, but it's okay. My daughter is just going through one in Hurricane on 4 South, and she's responsible for the road improvements. She's for curb and gutter. She's responsible for the trail that goes along. And in their ordinance, you have to pay for it when you get your building permit. So she has to write a check for all the improvements. I felt like this is what we have done. Delay agreement is a kind of it delays what may or may never happen, but it's very difficult to collect. The reason why Hurricane does it their way is because it's very difficult to get people to actually cough up the money.
Sure.
So that's why that they don't like delay agreements, and it's a bad idea, but it's better than nothing.
So in our case, we don't. In many cases, we don't actually have plans to do those improvements, so it makes more sense.
I mean,
Agreements are common anyways, so that's especially with existing land and.
most of this will hardly. I don't see it happening, other than in special occasions like Hurricane. They did it on 4 South, and that's been there for 100 years.
Right.
And it's just now that they decided that it's more of a collector road and they want to add a bike trail. But now whoever lives on it, you get a permit, you pay. But this allows us to say you get a permit, but you get to delay the payment.
Okay, appreciate that. Thank you for that clarification. Did I open the hearing? I forget.
You
I did.
You did.
All right. So before we talk, let's let them talk, and then we have some conversation we gotta have here because there is a question. Yeah,
Hi, my name is Linda and I'm in Gooseberry, and so we don't have a delayed agreement, to my understanding. So does this not count? Does it matter to us?
What's her last name?
Noise.
so the ordinance applies to everybody, just
Okay.
to be clear, but as Frank just pointed out, in order for it to affect you,
We have 70%.
where you already have a home on an existing road that's not already approved, the town would have to come to the residents in that area and say, we think it's time now to improve the road, whether it's pave it or whatever, and put curb and gutter. And then you'd all collectively have to achieve 70% approval of that. If that happened, then you would all be assessed the fees. So the 30% that say no, if it wins, they're gonna really reluctantly write that check every month, but
This in particular is really for new permits, for new builds.
It's not, does not pertain to an existing home.
oh, yeah.
Does not.
No.
No,
That's
it's
right,
not.
it does not.
What is your
address so I can see for
the file?
2846 North Purple Sage.
Thank you. I have to have it.
So what if new people come in and my entire front, that whole Purple Sage Road doesn't have a house on it, and they agree that they want it? Does
Doesn't
they
mean
change?
anything.
It doesn't mean anything to us.
70% of the other owners agree.
Okay, thank you for
Right.
clarifying that.
Sure.
My name is Nicole Woodard. I live on 1394 North Rome Way. So what if I improve my property and it's considered a new property? Am I gonna have to get road improvements and curb and gutters in front of my road? even
No.
though- Okay,
Yeah, no.
even if I build a garage or
No.
something?
You
This
already
is-
have a home
This
there.
is for a new building permit.
Yeah.
You're building a home.
Developers.
Yeah.
Good question. Yeah, I know that when I know it's a little scary in this town, whenever you talk about curb and gutter, everybody kind of throws up their arms and says, wait a minute, they can't force me. We're not gonna force you. A lot would have to happen for people that currently live in an area for this to apply. Chances are pretty slim. Most of the homes, on our roads are already built,
So does that mean no road would ever come in because it has to come in with the gutter and the
No,
sidewalks and everything? We can just get a road like the one that just went on Rome Way?
like an asphalt road.
Yes,
It could
Yeah.
easily do that.
That whole area is 1 acre lots anyways, so nobody says it has to have curb gutter and sidewalk out there. I mean, most everybody out there has horses, so it'd be kind of silly to try to put that in place with all those people that have animals.
well, that's what I was thinking when you guys discussed a couple meetings ago about the sidewalks.
Mhm.
And I lived in an area that was 1,200 homes on horse property.
Sure.
And so in theirs, they didn't have sidewalks, they had dirt areas.
Sure.
And the kids still were safe, they still played on those dirt things, and of course, as property owners, you had to clean,
Like walkways, pathways of some sort.
their pathways.
Oh, sure.
We have a road standard that's called rural road standards
Rural.
that has that.
Say that.
Okay,
Right.
So they still have curb and gutter, different, but curb and gutter to take care of your drainage.
correct,
That's mainly what that's for, so we
Correct.
don't flood everybody's properties like we have
Yeah,
now.
yeah.
And then, but doesn't have a sidewalk section, it's all designed for
Right.
the rural.
Any other comments? Anybody online?
Oh, okay. Someone asked, is the curb and gutter for 5 acre lots too?
This
I think we
does
just answered
pertain to-
I think we answered this question.
It doesn't
Yeah.
have an acreage
Yeah.
specific to it, but again, it's primarily gonna be affecting new development. And it's for people that are applying for building permits.
Perfect.
Like for many years, the town made all of us sign these delay agreements, so you're agreeing in advance to it. So to pay your portion. And that means, they may end up in a new area to have 70% really easy. But because in order to get your permit, you gotta deed the property and you gotta, pre-agreed to it. But in Appleberry, right now, I don't see anything coming over here because it's just, you know, even if you got 2 or 3, 4 or 5 homes on the street here that hasn't been built on yet, it's nowhere near 70%.
Well, the thing
You'd
that
have
I'm
to, you'd have to
concerned,
be in a lot surrounded by a bunch of
right,
other open lots and,
but my concern is if those 240 homes that are coming in, they can outvote. the
But that's
15
not,
we're
that's
we're
not, that's a
in
different
the
area.
side.
That very likely would
That's
have.
over here on the other side of the road.
The other side of the road, but it's still the road.
Yeah, well, they will have a whole different set of rules than what we had
Okay.
here 18 years ago. So
Okay.
Yeah, different
I'm
area.
like you, I bought out there because it was a dirt road. That's what I want.
Mhm.
I knew it was a dirt road when I moved in. I didn't expect it.
Okay, thank you all. I'm gonna close the public hearing on that. Appreciate that. Thank you all for your patience and allowing us to clarify. Now, we're gonna come back and have a discussion about this, so let's move on to the next hearing, but I do want to discuss the pros and cons of what Richard pointed out, whether roads. So it's worth the discussion amongst ourselves. Okay, the next one is an update number 10. It's an update to ordinance 11.02.090 with regard to the final plat approval process, and it's on page 50. I'll open the public hearing and let's start before we get comments with just a quick overview of what this is amending. As I see this, this is primarily a necessity due to the overabundance of requests for development.
Well, this simplifies the approval of, currently, every city in southern Utah, their final plat, when they come in, is approved by staff.
Right.
But when I say approved, it's not really staff because the planning commissioner needs to sign off on it. The engineer, the mayor, the town attorney. So it's just one signature that signifies that the construction that was approved has been followed and the final plat matches the preliminary plat that was approved before. So we have several places where it says that it's staff that approves it, and we have a place here that says it was approved by town council. So this just clarifies it that rather than having to come to a public meeting again to get your final plat approved, it's just simply all done by mayor, planning commission chairman, and staff. So it just simplifies the process rather than delay somebody that wants to record their plat for another month because we need a
Yeah, we can't.
planning
we
commission
don't want to
recommendation.
wait So till the next meeting.
Right.
But what we did do is make sure that there's record of these final plats being approved. And so we've made sure that there's language in here that says after the fact, that has to be presented to the town council at a meeting. So it shows up in minutes so that we have record that this had happened. And then there's an appeal process in here that you read if you want. So anybody have any comments about this particular? Yeah.
Jason Graham,
It is.
50 East 2000 South. So this is really poorly worded because the way that I understand it may not be the intent, but that Frank and the planning and zoning manager and the public works director can approve or disapprove something and circumvent your decision.
No,
The way that it's written.
no, it's just to be clear, this is approving the final plat. We approved the preliminary plat. So the final plat only gets approved if it follows the preliminary plat.
The final plat never comes to planning commission on any other.
Yeah, we never get to see it anyway with the town council, which is silly. They're not a bunch of planners, but go ahead.
The final plat never goes before you at all. So why is this needed?
It has to be approved. What do you mean? Like, what
This
is
just says who's gonna approve it.
Who approves it now?
the town council?
Okay.
Well, yeah.
So
We
if
had
the
both.
town council says yes, you could say no. That's
No,
the way this is written.
No,
what's the problem you're trying to, with your comment, what's the problem you want us to solve?
he's making the decision before the elected officials is what my issue is. In reading this way, the way it's written, the way that I understand it,
What decision about what?
about any of these, the plot.
On the final plat.
And so
Okay.
he is saying approved or disapproved, circumventing either the planning commission or the town council, the elected officials that we could hold accountable. And
You're
so
saying-
I have an issue with that.
So you're suggesting that the elected officials, we should only elect officials that can understand how to read a plat. Is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah, from the planning commission, we should.
We never have got. to see
We don't get the final plats.
We get a plat version.
Preliminary, yeah, we
Preliminary
approve
plat.
those.
Right? Look
We
through it.
approve those.
Okay.
Preliminary plats.
Right.
So that's, I think that's addressing your concern, right?
So if you say yes, if you vote yes, then when we get to the final, he could say no. Right?
He would definitely say no if the final doesn't match the preliminary, he better say no.
So who does it
Somebody
now?
better say
Who does it
no.
now?
The town council.
Okay.
Well,
they're just
That's
one.
my issue.
They're just one. Actually, the
It
staff
says-
does it and the town council does
It says staff, so whoever the staff is, that's who approves it. Typically, like if you go to Hurricane or St. George, it's typically done by the Public Works Director. Normally, it's not necessarily a planning and zoning manager. Normally, it's a Public Works Director. He's like the chairman of like a JUC. And he gets to say, okay, I've talked to all my people. I talked to fire, power, water, line. They've all put in their 10 cents. This is what we've all come up with. We all agree. Okay, we're gonna approve it. And he's kind of the chairman. That's the Public Works Director. And so apparently is what this is saying is it's gonna be a Public Works Director and the planning and zoning manager, which that one's kind of a new one on me,
So
but I'm
I
not
think
sure. I don't
to
know
help you
that
out a
really.
little bit more is we do the preliminary first. And then they follow up with the final plat to make sure it follows what we originally approved or disapproved, okay? So they have the time, instead of taking it to the next meeting or to the next meeting for the planning commission.
But that would be the
Literally
town
is.
council would approve the final plot currently, is that what you're saying?
Well,
Still
the
has to
town
happen
council
this way.
and staff has to do it now because it.
And it says right here, the town council still has to do it, but once they approve it, then it goes to town council.
No, the
It
town
just
council just
gets-
gets to hear.
It just get,
They're
there's
not
no,
There's no.
So they're not
hearing.
approving it, they're just gonna read it.
They just made aware that the final plat had been signed, but the mayor signs it, the planning commission chairman signs it, the engineer signs it, that the meets and bounds, the description of the lot, of the plat is what is, so everybody has the function, and the only function is for staff is to make sure that it matches what was approved.
Right.
That there's nothing else in there, and it's not overriding anybody, it's just everybody give their, yes, this is done the right way.
Well,
There
final-
is checks and balances
It's all there.
to make sure
If you
no
approve
one
it,
is.
though, and it goes before town council and they don't have any say, it's just recorded in the minutes.
Right.
What if there's something that the town council has a problem with, or you find something?
Well, they would come back to him and say, no, we need to take this back to the planning board.
No, it never works like
No,
that.
it
No,
would
it
not.
doesn't.
The real life-
Final plat never comes back to the planning commission, ever. I mean,
What the problem you're trying to solve exists now the way it is. So that can always happen. Somebody could always make a mistake.
But there are other things, there is a
That actually
difference.
happens all the time in Apple Valley. If your concern is that the final plat matches the preliminary plat,
I'm less
That
concerned about
concern has
mistakes, I'm
existed
more concerned
forever.
about
No,
motives.
there's actually a lot of difference between preliminary and final. That final doesn't always match preliminary 100% because when the staff or the public works people look at it, they may make them change something that wasn't right in the preliminary plat, but has to be right according to other. So final plat and preliminary plat do not always match. That's not what this is about.
Okay, so he just wants to know, Frank doesn't have the final word.
No.
There's a checks and balance. Explain
Yeah,
to
That-
him
that's
how
what
the
you're-
checks and
that's what you're
balances.
asking.
In Hurricane and St. George, where I've done most of my work, it's Public Works that takes it from a preliminary plat. Then they go through all the construction plans being approved. That's Public Works that takes care of that.
Public works director.
And once that is finished, all the work is completed, then the plat, the final plat is at the planning director in St. George or Hurricane, and they ensure that whoever's supposed to sign off on it the mayor, the engineer, each one of them sign off. They simply collect the signatures,
Get it recorded.
and then the final place is the engineer, the town attorney that signs off that the preliminary, the title subdivision report, that title report that shows that they have the right to deed these roads that are on this plat to the town, and they ensure that there's no liens against it. And so there's a whole step process that takes place, and the final one is the attorney. And the applicant doesn't even touch these final plats. It goes from the attorney's office to the recorder's office. So the applicants can't go in and make changes on the final plat at the last second. So this is just one of the steps that happens to make sure that everybody is okay with what's going on.
So does that help you a little bit? He doesn't have the final word. There is checks and balances that everybody keeps each other true to what was initially approved or just.
But what would be the negative at the final step of taking it to the town council instead of just being recorded in the minutes about there being a vote?
The negative is what we discussed earlier. You have to get on the agenda in order to do that. So there's a time delay, not to mention the fact that the people that make up the town council are not typically, they don't, yeah, they're not qualified to read these.
But that's
Documents
kind of
and-
his question is
I mean,
why is it going to the town council if they're not doing anything?
See,
What
for
is
years,
going to happen here?
for years,
When we had our, if you recall, when we had our discussion about this agenda, we added that in just so that there's a place where it's recorded.
for years it
Among our
was.
minutes, among our towns, so that when you go back, hey, when was this approved?
That's one.
You can, there was a presentation, I approved these half a dozen final plats between the last meeting and this meeting.
So they're not making any final approval. It's
It's
just
just
a
a
formal
report.
thing. So
Like a staff
person-
report.
It's essentially the council got sick of it. Okay, because it was always, yes. It
Right.
was never, because all their staff and the engineers and everybody's already signed off on it. So they're like, why do we have 20
Yeah.
20 final plats on a town council meeting that takes half an hour to deal with, when this is really all staff and engineers and lawyers that signs off on it. So they, for a while there, then they went to, they call it a consent calendar. So they had 20 items that they put on, that anybody have any questions on the consent, and that's where they landed. But nobody ever said anything. So they finally just said, hey, let staff do their thing. The mayor still signs, the engineer still signs, the lawyer still signs, the planning commission still signs. And either the public works director or the planning, in the other cities, it's just planning that signs off, and
It's just
that's
another
it.
person. we have to check with.
So it's just checks and balances and like.
What we do, and this might maybe help you, Jason, if you read the final letter H here, if an applicant, if a developer disagrees, let's say that the final plan's not getting approved, it's not getting approved, and that person feels like they're getting requests to do things way beyond what should be expected of them. They can appeal to the town council and say, hey, come on. So they can go, there's recourse. But if he says no repeatedly for 6 months to something and he's got no good reason for it, they can go in front of the town council and say, hey, wait a minute.
But it never, a final plat is just a legal document, and the only one that ever have any concerns with it is usually engineering and the lawyer, if the title report doesn't match who signed. Other than that, nobody ever has any.
Legal descriptions off or
Right,
something like that.
that's it.
Why would a final plat go to the town council for appeal instead of the appeals?
Because we don't have an appeal.
But
I
no,
thought we did.
no, this just simplifies that process. We do have an appeal board, but this just simplifies it, that if somebody should be unhappy with somebody doesn't sign it, then they go right to council,
Okay.
rather than file this.
And that way, I mean, staff works for council.
Right.
So the staff could get held accountable. Hey, what's going on here? Why are you doing this? I mean, that's, we just cut right to the chase.
Well, I guess one thing I'd say is why go to the town council if all they're doing is just going to say, great, let's record it? You don't need them to do that.
We don't.
I've been
And we're
doing
not
this-
even, we're not even giving them approval. We're literally just saying staff has to, we just want
I mean,
staff to report.
The point was, is we're trying to speed things up, so why wait for a council meeting 3 months or 3 weeks? You see what I'm saying?
No, it doesn't prevent them from getting recorded. It could be done completely.
It's
It's
just,
just, this happened. That's all.
Okay,
That's
well,
all I
that's
can
my
say.
question.
For 28 years, I've never had anybody other than the engineer come up with a legal description that didn't match, didn't close, or the lawyer saying your mortgage company is not signed off on this final plat.
So the developer can move along
Yep.
before the town council.
And the developers, they want
They're
the
just
short process.
hearing about it. They're not
So-
even.
So this is more of a staff report.
Yeah,
It
Right.
And it's one when it goes to town
Shall
council.
be presented. It does not shall be presented and action taken. It shall be presented. That's it.
Okay. Well,
Makes sense?
that just seems.
Anybody else have comments? All right. Anybody online, Jenna? All right, we've already had our discussion on that one, so that should go quickly. Let's do number 11, update of,
We're gonna pass that one first.
no, we'll go do them all separately. I'm just gonna get the hearings, that way in case people wanna go, they can go. Update, this one is an update on 11/02/100 final plat requirements. Let's open the public hearing on that one.
It's the same issue, it's just different sections talking about different things, but it's just taking that out of the town council and over to staff to be part of that.
So again, this was one of the problems we had with the ordinance, the way it was read. It, the recordation. Made up word of the plat. Couldn't happen until the town council approved it, and that's, again, just a time suck, it makes no sense.
So the only thing we did is take.
So
town
all we
council
did was
out.
change from town council in 2 places, remove them and said final plat approval staff, which references then the earlier one we just discussed. Anybody have any comments on that? All right, do you? Well, you can do it during this. We'll close the public hearing on that. All right. Number 12. This is an update on 11/02/180. This is with regard to penalty, validity and restrictions on page 58. Jerry's on top of it. And this one is, again, this is an epidemic in this town for some reason.
And
Weird things happen in the past and we get applications and we can't make sense of them. Because, lot splits just happen willy-nilly and it never were reported or presented to the town, all that kind of stuff. We're gonna prevent that from now on. So tell us, you wanna?
yep, that's it. I mean, it's pretty much just people will subdivide their own properties and then they sell it to somebody and then those people come to us and say, hey, I want a building permit. And we're like, we don't even know who you are.
So
We
we've
don't-
had these where people come before us and quite frankly, it's a disservice to the applicant. Because we have no choice now but to say to them, hey, go back and fix this and then reapply. And now we're just saying, don't apply at all until the thing is fixed.
When you subdivide a split of properties off, it's called the subdivision, then you're required to put all the improvements in. But in the past, we've had subdivision allowed to be just divided, or they just did it.
So then we find out.
And no improvements, and then they get really mad. They get mad at the town for, well, I bought this property.
Well, there's also the state allows a simple lot split, which is what we made for the mayor now can only do up to 3 lots as a simple lot split.
It just changed to 1 lot split, so everything else goes to planning commission and town council now.
Yeah, but this literally just prevents a delay. If you want to make an application, make sure if the lot that you're applying for had been split and it wasn't done properly, you're not even going to entertain your application until that.
This is the first we've heard of it.
Yeah. It's usually like, honestly, it's a
Well, it's a danger because these people buy these lots and then they find out half a mile down the road is where water is. And they can't get a permit until water is brought up
Right.
to their property, so we can fight fires if necessary, and power is not there, so this discourages people from just subdividing and selling behind everybody's backs. It protects the town and the people that are.
Not to mention, you know, an application fee is not free, so you might end up paying a fee to us to apply for something, then.
I might point out that the subdivision ordinance refers to all that activity as misdemeanor.
Mhm.
So we're not breaking new ground here. It's,
Okay, so comments. Go ahead.
Mario Frosky, 1024 West Hill Canyon. So how would somebody that is buying a lot know that it would be aware that maybe that lot was illegally split? You know, is it buyer beware? Is that what you're
Pretty
kind of
much.
basically saying?
I mean, they're gonna find out about it one way or another. If they come to us for a zone change and that's when they find out about it, that's the worst time.
Right,
So they
but
better find out about it sooner.
Your concern is well taken.
Yeah.
In the other cities, they have a geofence around their city. So when things get recorded, staff knows.
okay.
Okay, but here in Apple Valley, we've never been that sophisticated, so people do stuff and we don't know about it and it's too late.
What I would suggest, if you're gonna buy land in
No, I
Apple Valley,
just-
ask Forrest if the lot was, he somehow knows.
big long list, big long list.
I was just kind of wondering.
Yeah,
how
that's a good
somebody
question.
that
It's a
From
tough-
out of state would even have a,
There's real no way for them.
A
to-
better question is, ask if it was legally split. Not walk in and say, I'm not making sense here.
Yeah, before you
It's
buy,
more-
ask.
It's more likely your lot was not legally split.
The county will report it whether the city says it's.
Yeah,
okay.
exactly.
That's the problem right there. A lot of
right,
times.
but it then legally has a title on it and
And it was done
if it's
illegally.
wrong, when you go to purchase it or
You
build anything
you have
on it.
recourse against the people who sold it.
So typically we'll have, like I got 2 calls the last few months. Somebody bought a piece of property and they subdivided it illegally. And then they came and said, hey, we want a building permit. I want to sell this. How do I sell this lot? I split my property in 5, 6 pieces. I want to, and we said, okay, well, whoever subdivided it, they need to put all the improvements in first. Before you can put in get a building
Like
permit.
they didn't go through a title
They didn't come
company.
to
The
us.
title
or anything
company
like
doesn't,
They don't know
No.
anything.
they don't know, they don't notify people that this was illegal or not legal. You do your, like a real estate agent typically will call, if I take a listing, then I will call the town and say, hey, is there any issues with it? Can I get a building permit before, so I don't want to get involved in the lawsuit. But we have a lot of people that don't do that. So it is a very real, so that's why we're doing this, to make it as much noise as we can.
I know, I think so.
Okay, Jason?
Reports on the county records.
You need my info here?
Yes, please.
Jason Brown, 1950 East, 2000 South. So this concept, so I have an illegal lot split according to you guys. But the
Not correct.
I don't.
concept is incorrect. The concept, that the town, so my builder that built my home, American Heritage Home, they're the big builder. I don't know if there's builders gemstone or not. This whole concept to go before a town to ask permission for a lot split is foreign. So I recorded with the county, I split my lot, I've got a separate parcel number, just like she's saying, and a title company can do it privately, that's a legal lot split. The concept that if I split a lot, that I have to put in improvements, that's nowhere else. That's not.
It's in our town ordinances, yes.
But it's a weird little Apple Valley thing, so I'm saying it shouldn't
No.
be there.
It's every town.
No.
It's state.
You can do
Not
illegal
on
lot
a
split
lot split.
just about anywhere
Or a
else,
subdivision.
according to other builders that do this on a regular basis.
We're not denying that it happens, but it's not
It's a
supposed to.
legal lot split. You don't have to ask a town permission to split a lot,
Definitely disagree.
and you don't have to put in
If
infrastructure.
the town has an ordinance, I don't know why you would ignore it.
Well, our
Because
ordinance is
it's,
for subdivision.
the ordinance is wrong, for one, it shouldn't be there.
No, that's not correct. Every subdivision, if you read a subdivision ordinance, every split you are a subdivider when you split lots.
There's a
And
description,
that's-
there's a definition for subdivisions, and a simple lot split does not fall into
It
the
does.
definition of
I
Read,
subdivision.
read the
will just
state law
disagree.
that we
I'll
have to
disagree.
follow. Go find the state law. we have
Okay.
to follow.
Thank you for your comment. Anybody else have any comments?
I did want to mention to her, she's talking about legal, and by legal, we're talking about violation of the town board, not state or.
It would be fantastic if the county recorder would only record stuff that was approved by the cities and towns. If it violates the ordinance, but they don't. You can put any document in front of them, they were recorded.
All right, we got another comment.
It's weird.
What's your address?
1650 South Cleveland. So if you own a piece of property, and you split it. You have to put in an improvement, split it.
Yes.
At the time you split your lot, you gotta put in the improvement. Not a subdivision.
It is a subdivision.
You subdivided your lot.
It is.
If you would like, get with me and I'll show you chapter and verse.
It
It'd be
definitely is a
interesting, no,
subdivision.
if you got a 40-acre parcel and you split it.
There's exceptions for farmland. You can split farmland off and, sell 500 acres to your neighbor without triggering the improvement thing. But farmland is the only exception that there is. But I'll show you chapter and verse.
I mean, if you just think about it, it makes sense. If you've got a 20-acre lot and you want to sell and it fronts a road, but behind it's BLM, and you split it 10 acres at the end, you've removed if you want to sell that 10 acres back, they got no access to the road, that would be, but you could do that if we didn't.
That's a private party matter.
Okay,
No,
so I
no, it's
just
not,
No,
looked
because you're
up,
gonna sell that lot to somebody who now comes and expects the town to provide them with services that we can't
No.
provide.
They own the property. When they buy the property, they have to figure out how to get
If they-
utilities to it. I had to do that.
okay,
And
so
they
I
can't,
just
if
looked
the
up,
town can't get utilities to it, then we can't give them a building permit.
And it's got the front.
That's not necessarily.
Yes, necessarily in the application of the building permit, you have to have a little survey.
100%.
We have a lot of people who have houses and structures without town infrastructure. Like,
so I just
Well,
No
Googled
argument
that,
with that, we do.
I just Googled
It's a
this.
full of ordinances. I
and
don't understand.
Oro, I don't even know if I'm pronouncing this right, Oro Valley, Arizona, Oro. Town approval is required for their land splits too.
Oh, yeah.
Every-
So
every-
I haven't gone through because I didn't want to take everybody's time to go through that,
No.
but
according to my builder, who's pretty big, built a cop zone too, Berkeley doesn't require it either.
Oh,
So.
Okay, anybody else have any more comments?
Nope.
All right, anybody online?
No.
Okay, let's close that.
we softened it. Try to get a man.
I can swing that hard.
No.
Number 13, this is an update to 11.08.020 waste disposal system. All on page.
What are we doing on this one?
This one.
You want me to enlighten?
Yeah, give us a quick overview, and then we're just basically adding a line here.
This is something that it says on our applications when you apply for a preliminary plat, that you need to get a letter. You need to go talk to the sewer people to make sure that you can do sewer, they'll support you. You need to talk to the water district to make sure that there's water available and they can support you for your subdivision. So this just allows sends the applicant to the sewer and water. This particular one, I think, is just sewer. So when they come before the planning commission and town council for a zone change and or a preliminary plat, we have a letter that says that, yeah, they can hook right up. It's available. Because one of the things planning commission and town council has to consider is the services available for this proposed subdivision. And this gives us a little letter from each of those entities, and we've also proposed to add power, but that's somewhere else. So that way, nobody ends up with a subdivision that they can't go anywhere with. It's already been in front of those people, and this is just a preliminary. It's not a engineered plan, just a preliminary letter that just says, yes,
Didn't we turn our sewer over to, Ash Creek?
almost done, not yet.
All right, let's open the public hearing on this. Anybody have any?
Because of that, if it's going to Ash Creek, it shouldn't be Big Plains Water and Sewer on this wastewater, it should be Ash Creek.
Yeah, we should.
We'd have to amend that at that point.
Well,
Yeah,
it's
after
it's
it's
not
done.
done, so, yeah, there'll be a whole lot of, find and
Changes when they
replace
come.
going on.
Okay, I just want,
Cause this stuff, that shows up all over.
yeah, that's what.
That'll be Jenna's, weekend job or something.
We could change it now, simply change it to sewer district. And that's also, right now, it's
I mean, that's what it says in the.
in the section that I added on, it says sewer district on purpose.
Right.
Yeah.
So if we want it right now, we can just say, let's replace Big Plains with sewer district.
Well, but the
Then
problem
it-
is sewer.
We'll have to
Then
do
it's
that
both.
later.
Honestly, I don't know
Yeah,
that that's
why?
gonna require a hearing. It's literally just updating. I mean, the name, the entity changes from one to another.
I think that's what.
If you wanna update it now, we could.
Well, it shows up all throughout this whole thing though, so I don't wanna get started down that road and then.
Maybe make a motion and that gets done, so as it's approved.
Yeah, included in the motion.
Okay.
Yeah, it's staff,
We don't have to do it
staff
later.
that take care of it.
When that happens, when the time comes, the staff can go through and fix it.
Okay.
What do you
We'll
think?
handle it, Jeremy.
Get rid of it, take it off the plate later.
Any other comments
Oh.
on this one?
No comments. Going one.
What page are you on, Frank?
Oh, wait.
That hearing's closed.
Page 62.
All right, basically same thing here for water. This is an update to 11.08.080.
Did we skip?
Well, no, wait a minute.
I think we have storm drain first, don't we?
Storm drainage is
At
first.
least in mine. Oh, really?
Oh, and mine it says water.
Good water.
Oh, that's weird. All right, let's do storm drain, because I think that's the next one in the packet.
First too, so.
Either way.
Storm drain's in the packet on the next one, so let's do that one. So this is number 15, we'll come back to 14. On my packet, update to 11.08.030 storm drainage requirements.
So this is, we've already discussed this from another section in our subdivision ordinance, but I discovered that there was another section that dealt with this too. So this is simply making it to try to solve all these stormwater problems we have in Apple Valley, where we don't have curb and gutter that leads the stormwater down to a detention pond that's in the subdivision. Right now, it goes into people's yards, into people's property. So this makes somebody that gets a building permit for a lot, and it pretty much only applies to this part of Apple Valley and Cedar Point and South Zion Estates, because none of them have any drainage facilities whatsoever. So it just says that if part of your building, you gotta have your engineer provide a little study that says you're doing this much driveway, this much house, and then you are required to dig a little hole, put some rocks in it, and then make sure that you don't send all the extra water that you have created down to your neighbor. You're retaining that part on your own property. So it's a small Band-Aid onto a storm system.
Down to the police house.
Yeah, it's really, yeah, you are the one in Cedar Point, part of Cedar Point.
We just built a big trench in our yard and put what was the size of the pipe, 14-inch, 7.5-inch pipe or something like that?
And there,
It was a lot of money.
there's an exception to this in a development that's already.
Yeah, it shows in here that if it's in a subdivision that already has storm detention, then none of this applies to them.
So everybody knows, this is normal, we've done this everywhere else, and we've been actually requiring it for quite some time to be drawn on the plans, like a year and a half now.
Yeah, it just didn't have an ordinance.
We don't have the
Yes, it didn't
support
have
for
an
it.
ordinance, But we've
Right.
already been requiring this.
But that's some of the cleanup we're trying to do here.
Right.
We've been asking people, and if they're savvy enough, they look through the ordinance and go, hey, where does it say I have to do that? So this is one of those
Well,
things.
state
This
law,
is for
state law
the-
says it, so we're just adding it to ours.
This is for those people that just like to barely do enough to get it by.
Maybe they do that.
You all know I built a moat around my house, right?
That's what we just did.
When I built mine, I wasn't doing it for you, I was doing it for me. I don't want the water in my face. But you're welcome. All All right, do we open this? Any comments on this one? Anybody online? This hearing is closed. Okay, now we have an amendment to, let's see, this one is
68.
water. 11.08.080.
I have mine as 67.
Yeah, but the changes are on 68.
Yeah.
Right.
So this is the same thing as we did with sewer. We're getting a letter from water.
We've already been doing that, but there just wasn't an ordinance for it.
Right. I had somebody saying, how come you don't, where does it say that? So I'm like, it's,
It's in the green.
And it wasn't there.
But it's been on our permit application.
Has been on the
Right.
permit the whole time.
Probably been on, the final, the preliminary plat application too.
Yeah, it was on the plan, but not on the zoning one. It was on the preliminary plat application.
So
And then
we're good. We're just adding it.
we're supporting the document. That's all we're doing.
Right.
Open the public hearing on this one. Any comments on this one? Is that clear? We're just adding requirement that you can actually get water. If you come to us and apply for a zone that requires water, you gotta prove to us that you can get water. For a preliminary plat. Both of those. Make sense? Any comments?
Our minimum requirement, we're just now.
Cool. Goes that one. Thank you all. And finally. This is an update to 11.12.020 with regard to design standards. And this is,
Just the one change.
design standards of Apple Valley subdivision, and we're making
2 words.
2 words. Something we have never had to before.
There's
4 words.
4 words being added to this
Right.
ordinance. And this is driven by what's happening across
Oh,
the
up
street.
the top, okay.
They come to us and say they want gated communities, and we say, what?
Yeah, so now we say the council, planning commission make a recommendation, and the council approve or disapprove, rather than telling us what they demand to do.
Right.
So this simply, they may very well approve all of it. That's not the issue. This just brings it to, so it's out in the open. We don't have an argument later
Because
on.
what it says right here is if somebody wants to do a gated community, they have to ask first.
Correct.
Not necessarily.
We already had to approve
The subdivision.
the private streets. Now we're saying and gated communities.
Right. It's in our plan development ordinance that you typically iron out these kind of things. But this just gives us the council a specific.
Rather than them coming saying.
We're doing it.
I was gonna do this all along. I don't think I had to tell you about that. Now you do. So, any comments? Let's open the hearing. Yeah.
Was this approved like 5 years ago or something? This new development, the big
Oh, it's
development?
been in the works for years. yeah.
That's what, it's
12
been a
years.
while. Oh, okay.
In order to move along with time, can we just talk about this ordinance, not some other development, please?
No, I
I have a
know.
birthday party to get to.
Okay.
You're
Any other comments? Anybody online? All right, let's close that hearing. Thank you all. Thank you all very much. Appreciate your time. Okay, let's go through and discuss these, everybody. This is the part of the meeting where we talk and you don't, in case you haven't heard me say that before. Number 17, discussion and possible action on 10.10.020 removal of this is the update to the commercial development. We discussed that. It's basically just clarifying. Anybody want to make a motion on that one? You could literally just say to approve changes as written if you want. Your motion.
I approve the changes. I make a motion to approve the changes on 10.10.030.
Recommend approval.
Recommended approval.
Second.
Any comments? Any further discussion? Nope.
And those were-
Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? No opposed. That passes. Thank you very much. Discussion and possible action. Let's take action here on the changes to 10.28 .190 with regard to curb gutter sidewalks and road improvements. This one, before we make a motion, let's discuss this.
Yeah.
Because Richard does make a point that it's possible to do this and the town could own the cost of road improvements.
So this was the reason why, like, when we go to the bigger cities or whatever, and let's just, for instance, say Murray, Salt Lake,
Okay.
okay? When the town makes the owner pay for that curb gutter and sidewalk, and the reason why is even in a snowstorm, they're responsible to clear that snow. The town doesn't come and clear the snow off the sidewalk, only the roads. So that's kind of where technically the town owns the sidewalk, but you're responsible to clean it, but you had to pay to put it in, but they don't make you pay to put the road in. If they're gonna come and put it
Yeah,
in asphalt.
and that's
all I was saying.
I know, I get that, and that's a great argument in a town that has a road budget.
Well,
Um,
if we're gonna go through, let's just say we wanna pave Gooseberry.
Yeah.
Then we need to go through and get 70% approval to go in and pave Gooseberry.
if we want them to pay for it.
Right.
We don't have to.
Right.
Done with town money,
Yeah,
It's
that's
just
the
done.
thing that that's where I'm inclined to leave it in, because it doesn't mean we have to require people to pay for it. We could say as a town, hey, we got some grant money, we're flush with cash because of all the hotels we built. Let's pave the roads
so.
and we'll pay for it. We could do that.
Let me explain how it worked, how it usually worked with streets. So, the side of the road that I developed, say I have a subdivision on one side,
But that's different between a homeowner and a developer. Developers always pay it. I'm in 100% agreement.
right, but I'm
Developers-
gonna get to that.
Okay.
I'm gonna get to that, because we have a little unique situation. So typically, on this side of the road, 25 feet is by the developer that does this. On this side of the road over here is the other developer. But if it's a collector road or a large road, then the town pays for the center of it. That's how it always works. So if the town may just say, hey, Frank, in your development, put in the center portion of it for us too. And then they reimburse me for doing it. But we have a unique situation here in Apple Valley where we have subdivisions that are even some of the newer ones that don't have putting in any of these improvements in. So I don't think it's reasonable to make the citizens of Apple Valley, all the citizens, pay for the improvements that developers should have been put in when they did the subdivision, but due to, mayor didn't catch it or allowed it or whatever was the case, because our subdivision ordinance and our design standards always said that you have to put it in. But sometimes they've approved them where they say you don't have to put curb and gutter and sidewalk or asphalt in. So this just says that in case that road does decide to be approved, then you, the landowner that are adjacent to it, you save money when you bought this because those improvement wasn't there. So if now it's your turn to step up to the plate, just like it did with the other one.
What do you think about that? I mean,
So
that's-
it only applies to,
You're basically just delaying.
Yes, and
and it may never come to pass.
Because you would have paid for the improvement when that went in. had it
By
been
your
made.
lot. By law. So now, if the town comes in there, somewhere in there that I read that if the town comes in there and basically forces them on them or says, we're gonna do it, you're gonna pay because you signed this agreement.
That could happen now to
They have
anybody.
10 years to pay.
Yeah.
Isn't that what it says?
That's what this says. That's if it's done so that,
Basically forcibly.
When you
yeah,
signed your-
but what will happen, and what happened to me was like, I said, I had to, in order to get my building permit, I had to sign this delay agreement, and I had to deed the land over.
Was there any?
I just do whatever.
rules of that at the time? I mean, could they come back and say, hey, we want all the money in a year?
No, it just says, it's outlined the whole process. I have the letter, you can read them.
Was that Moser that did that?
Yeah, though they did it, many of them have, but a whole bunch of them that didn't.
Yeah.
So that's why we have this mix and match.
Well, there's a whole lot that didn't even require to fix the road a little. bit.
Anything, right? We're well aware of it.
So,
So I have a question about this then. So let's say Gooseberry, she's lived there for 10 years and all of a sudden this developer came in and says, hey, I'm gonna buy this side of the street and they're making me do just this side that they're developing on.
Right.
And so they paid that section of the street.
And that's how it
but the
stays.
That's how it
other
works.
side is still gravel. you
It'll
know?
stay that way.
And it-
Stays that way.
There's roads like that in Las Vegas, right?
All over
So
the
at
place.
least
You
it
could go to
won't
Las
make
Vegas.
them
Right,
come up with money
No.
because
No,
someone
No.
sold that piece of land.
no.
Right.
And it gets fixed on the other side. Like I said, right now, if you go to Las Vegas, you can be cruising along
right.
and all of a sudden you're
Yeah,
in
you
a dirt
do.
road.
Yeah, there's-
A mile later, it's paved again, because this was horse property or this or that, wasn't required, but the developers got required to do this. So that.
But what
that's
I like about this process is, this is actually a written delay agreement that's recorded. So if they sell it and they go to somebody else, they have legal notice. They know that there's an agreement there that says that someday I may be paying for my portion of that.
If the town approves
Correct,
to put this in,
correct.
then you're gonna be subject to paying.
It's
Yep.
70% of the.
And
That's it.
That's the thing.
Yes.
You could vote it down.
Yeah, but once you sign, let's just say there was
But you
a,
still have to have 70% is what you're saying.
Yeah.
still 70%. Correct.
We can't just come in and
But
dictate.
70% could be a delay agreement, say it was
But I
a
do
new.
like, I mean, what you pointed out is the town could just simply say, we're paying for this. This doesn't
Yes, they could.
require us, to,
Right.
this just allows us to have a choice.
If by chance we get a grant writer in here,
Yeah,
and we get
right.
some road grants, I
For
mean,
sure.
yeah.
And it's only the one side. It's not the middle section or the other side. It's only
We
the
still
side
have our
that you,
responsibility for that,
on your side.
Yeah, it's always only 25. That's never anywhere that I've ever been, it's never more than 25.
yeah. That makes sense. Okay, so you're good now with the way it's
Yeah,
written?
yeah.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments about?
If we are going to add roadways,
It's already on there.
well,
Did I miss something?
it needs to be in the heading, is all I'm saying.
Oh,
We
yeah,
got
let's
curb,
add that.
curb gutters
Okay, let's
and
change that.
sidewalks, but it
Get
needs to
rid
say,
of the and, get rid of the and,
yeah, on 1028,
Curbs,
190.
gutters, sidewalks,
What page number?
48.
48, thank you.
And then just do and payment.
Right,
Okay, but we need,
Road, just say road.
okay, so I know I'm a grammar stickler.
Up here in the section one.
So it needs to be curbs, gutters,
sidewalks,
comma,
right.
sidewalks, and, another comma after sidewalks, and
Roads.
Road.
That comes optional. but-
They were
we're
there.
gonna do it
road-
that way.
Road improvements.
Right.
And
That's how it's written down
road
here.
is
So
improved.
keep it the same.
That's what we talked about, the road improvement.
Sidewalks and road improvement.
with the comma after sidewalk.
Okay,
All
right.
Yes,
There, it's also,
Needs to be fixed
needs to
below.
be in the first line, fixing the
Yes.
first line also.
Oh, yeah.
You see that, Jenna?
Now you know why we work so closely with Forrest.
Hey.
He got the falcon eye.
I keep trying to teach him, but he.
There's no hope.
Well, the problem is you do it, so he gets lazy. That's how it is.
Yeah.
We just count on you.
English is the
See what I'm
second
talking about
language,
there,
my
Jenna?
excuse.
Jenna, I'm getting it for you, so you
Yeah,
can,
that,
okay,
that first line also needs roadways. You see that?
Yep. Thank you.
The
For it.
only other thing I
And
have,
Sherry.
we're adding approval of town council. So we need to add that because they've already recommended it. You're kind of getting redundant there.
No, it says recommended of the Public Works Department,
Yeah,
Planning
rec-
Commission, and approval of the town council.
well, but the recommendation applies to town council also, if you see what I'm saying. Upon the recommendation of the Public Works Department, Planning Commission, and the town council.
And approval.
Yeah, that's what you're adding, but I'm saying we need to.
Because the town council isn't
Are we on the same
recommending.
thing?
The others are recommending, the town council is approving.
Okay, okay, well, that's what I'm getting at.
Right.
I'm probably wording a little bit more, but that's okay.
You don't like my English?
Yeah, we're English. Yeah, this part, that's what I was wondering.
But the planning commission is not approving it?
No,
Okay.
they're just recommending approval. That's all planning
Because
commission
the
ever
approval
do.
always happens from the town council.
Well,
We
not
only
this time,
recommend-
then. Not this time.
Well, the point is we can't, as a planning commission, we can't approve, we can only recommend.
So that's right.
Right,
So
So we're good.
the idea, the way it's worded is.
it's a
right, right.
little odd, but I'm good with it.
Well, add a comma after commission.
right?
Yeah, maybe that would help us, put a comment.
After the planning commission had a comment.
That's the comment you've been trying to get.
Yeah, there's good as
See what happens when you drop those comments? Maurice?
Yeah.
See, now you're on board.
I don't know. I'll find something wrong.
All right, so as amended, who wants to make this motion?
So yours.
Go for
I'm
it.
totally lost.
Right.
I move we, recommend approval to the town council of amendment for, ordinance 10.28.190 curbs, gutters, sidewalks and roadways. As, road improvements as amended. As amended.
I second that.
Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on. This is the update to the final plat approval process.
And we talked about this.
You know, I'm wondering if we can group some of these.
Let's do it. Yes.
Because I don't think there's anything controversial about even any of the remaining ones, is there?
Now we're just, we're.
I've got questions.
Oh,
Come on, Forrest, I got my daughter's birthday present in my truck.
no, let's have a discussion about the ones you have.
The one, the next one, the 11-02-09.
Yeah.
We're taking it off of here, but there's about 4 other places we need. to
Are you
take
talking
off.
number 25?
Well, I don't know where it is. It's on page 50.
51.
You have to keep if you want in.
I mean, that's where
You
the,
know,
Well,
whatever it
if
takes.
you know where they're at for us, let's bring them all up so we fix it.
I've
I
got it
missed
here. I've got it.
Okay.
What page?
What are we looking at?
he's saying there are other ordinances. that require
There's
this.
11-08-040K that talks about TC approval.
What? We're not even, that's not on our agenda.
Oh, yeah. we
It's not
can't do
on the
that.
agenda. We can't do
I know it's not on the agenda. That's not my point. My point is, if we're gonna change it here, we need to change it over there.
So make a note of, so we put it on another
On
file.
on another work meeting.
But do
Can
we,
you put it on our next meeting?
does it go to that level? Just need to go to another? I'm not real clear that,
My opinion is err on the side
okay.
of caution. So, because we just had one attorney spent weeks there,
Yeah.
days and days and days going through our ordinances. And because they weren't thorough in the past, could be in trouble.
So just, the next meeting in which we have a 10-day noticeable time for a hearing,
In fact, oh, yeah.
let's put it on the agenda.
What is this exactly?
This is updating 11.08.040K.
Anyone else?
I can give you.
.08.040K.
Just give Jenna a
In
list.
fact, yeah, if all your discussion here is, let's just add these to her anytime. We don't have to have it
Right.
for the meeting. Okay. Did you have anybody have any other comments about any of the other? Any of the ones in front of us? Questions?
Do you have a question on the, storm drainage?
Sure.
It's under the, subdivision ordinance, but then it talks about land outside the subdivision, which is okay. Don't mind talking about it, but no, if you're not in a subdivision, why would you go read the subdivision ordinance? So I guess what I'm saying is we need to add reference to it somewhere.
Well, this just excuses them in case it allows, so when they come for a building permit and they're not inside a subdivision, they still have to do the same thing.
But why would they know to go read it into the subdivision?
They don't need
Because-
they don't need to go read it there.
They will get
required
their-
right on the building permit.
Yeah, they will try to get their building permit and they'll get informed that you need to do this and this and this.
So let's.
So the same thing goes on the building permit.
Yeah.
So right now, for instance, we built a house next to Lee. He sold the 5-acre lot to these people. Okay, we already required them to put in a bar ditch, a retention pond, everything, because the state law says we can't take that water and put it on the neighbors.
Okay.
So we required that a year and a half ago. These guys had to put in a retention pond to retain that water before they got their permit. That was all part, it had to be on the plans. So we're already doing it. We're just telling them that here that we have the
It's
legal.
not, yeah.
authority.
Where would they find that legal authority before this?
They didn't. That's why it's going in
It's
here.
on the. permit.
That's why it's there.
Before it was just sat on the.
Now it's on the.
So you're saying the permit's gonna reference this?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, that's kind of my point.
Yeah, see this, right? We went into the 21st century. We have now a very nice computer system
Yeah,
that every department gets to approve a building permit. So it's just simply fire for fire, planning for planning.
Right.
And so it works really well and it's simple when everybody just does their.
But again, on this particular ordinance, this is actually state law. We're not rewriting the horse or building a new wheel. This is state
well,
law.
no, I understand that, I'm not
No,
arguing
your
with
point,
that, I'm just
I think
saying.
your initial point was, how would they know to find it here? And the point is, they'll
Right.
find it in the building permit
Okay.
application.
Yeah, it now says.
But now it's backed up,
Yes, that was it.
Now there's
Yeah,
They'll
language in
help
there.
guide someone.
and this number is going to be referenced on the building permits, and that's all.
Yeah, they'll, if they miss it, then
I
they'll.
didn't want this thing to be on the law, and then we come back and
Yeah,
say,
we know where to
people, oh,
find it.
well, you screwed up.
Yeah.
So it's how this references in the past, like this job I'm talking about. We required it, but there was nowhere that actually said we had to require it. So they're like, well, what do you mean it's required? And where is it show? Show me the ordinance that it's
And
required.
that's kind of my point.
For me, the only thing I'd say is it's state law and we just push it and forget about it.
But now, we-
Craig's covering it, it's in our ordinances, and now we're gonna reflect it, right?
Just as long as we reference it somewhere.
It just makes it simpler now.
okay, any other questions, comments, so that we can,
You have anything else for
I'm
us?
kind of lost.
No, I
Which
don't
one were we
think
just
so.
discussing? 11.08.030?
Storm
No.
drainage.
Got it.
Oh, yes.
yeah,
Yeah,
030, yeah.
Okay, I'm on it.
Is that it for us,
I'm good.
for these ones in front of us?
Let me think one second. It does seem like I had something on design standards, but I don't know what it was. I didn't write it down, so let's don't worry about it.
I threw it away when you.
I'll
That was
use
just
$5
about the gated
later.
community.
Oh, that was just about the gated communities, okay, oh, yes, okay, I'm good.
So I make a motion that we approve 18 through 25 on our, changes as written.
Recommend approval.
Didn't know if I recommend. Well,
Sorry, approval.
okay, recommend approval to the town council for the changes as written on items 18 through 25.
I second that approval.
Any,
We've already done some of it, so.
Only 17.
we already did.
Oh, I thought we did more than that.
Oh, no, we did two. We did 18.
Did we?
So
Oh, we
you
did, okay,
changed
I'm
it to
sorry.
19.
19 through 25. Thank you,
Okay.
Doris.
Okay, so I second 19 to 25.
There we go.
Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously again. Okay, before we adjourn, we have a new date to the second meeting we're gonna have this month. I think we're all gonna be here now for this one, right? It's the 19th. You're gonna be back by then?
When we're doing the 23rd. The notice of the 23rd.
We didn't meet the timeline. Wasn't that what we did?
No,
It was gonna be the 13th and then we moved it to the
13th.
19th.
13th.
Oh, God.
As long as we don't mind celebrating my
Sweet.
12th anniversary and next Tuesday, we're good.
Well, okay. Jenna, can we do that?
That's my anniversary too.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, but not on the actual anniversary.
All right, do I have a final motion?
Yeah.
Make a motion, you adjourn.
Second.
Further discussion? Those in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Happy birthday. Well, happy birthday.
Yeah, she's in. I got a present in my truck.
Oh, man.
Better get home and wrap that thing.